is examination of one's own conscious thoughts and feelings, normally related of one's mental state. There are two introspective techniques used in qualitative research that can be valuable in providing insight into the thought process of language learners and teachers. Verbal reports are oral records of an individual's thought processes. These reports provide us information currently available in short-term memory of individuals. There are kinds of verbal reports differentiated by when the data is collected. A think aloud during the listeners are doing the task, or retrospective reports immediately after completing the language teaching and learning task. How about collecting verbal report data? We must attend some procedures to conduct the verbal reports and some procedures that can help us to organizing and interpreting data. When we are conducting a verbal report, we have to give simple directions, telling the respondents to verbalize everything they are thinking as they complete a task. Occasionally, we may be reminding them to think out loud their thinking. Be as unobtrusive as possible, speaking only at the pre-planned point for retrospective reports, or when the respondent lapses into silence during the think aloud. Ask in particular points. We have to tell them to stop and talk about what they are thinking. What are you thinking just now? Or what do you think is going on? And not ask questions like, did you find the tape confusing? Finally, the record sessions. It is essential that we record the sessions since the data will provide the basis for our analysis. There are other procedures that can help us in organizing and interpreting data. First, transcribe your data. Review existing studies on language learning that make use of verbal protocols in data collection. Next, divide your data of what respondents say into thought units, that is, segments of the transcript text that reflect in particular thought or idea. Sort each thought unit into one of the categories you have decided to use based either on an existing coding system or one you have devised. Have a second reader also code the data so that you can determine whether or not you have been objective in categories in the data, and look for patterns in your categorizations. For example, you may find that the students who are generally strong readers or listeners in your class use particular strategies, while those who are typically less proficient use others.
What are diary studies? According to Bailey and Osner, a diary study in second language learning, acquisition, or teaching is an account of a second language experience as recorded in a first-person journal. The diarist may be a language teacher or a language learner, but the central characteristic of the diary studies is that they are introspective. The diarist studies his own teaching or learning. Thus, he can report on affective factors, language learning strategies, and his own perceptions, facets of the language learning experience which are normally hidden or largely inaccessible to an external observer. According to Bailey, diary studies are often direct first-person case studies in which the research method is defined by the data collection procedure. A language learner keeps an intensive journal using introspection and/or retrospection as well as observation, typically over a period of time. The data analysis may be done by the diarist himself or by an independent researcher using the learner's diary as data. Why you use diary studies in applied linguistics research? As Bailey said, diary studies can provide the following benefits. Firstly, like other introspective methods such as verbal reports, diary studies can provide information about second language learners and teachers and their perspective on the affective and instructional factors that affect second language learning and teaching. Secondly, diary studies allow researchers to see factors identified by teachers and learners that may not be readily identified by researchers as worth studying. Thirdly, when used with other sources of data, diary studies can provide a vehicle for data triangulation. And finally, the data collection process itself is more accessible in that it's low-tech, portable, and trainable. Data collected in our diary is just data. If we want to do a diary study, the data collected has to be analyzed by ourselves or by a researcher. In conducting any diary study, Bailey recommends the following steps to be taken into account. First, like other introspective methods such as verbal reports, diary studies can provide information about second language learners and teachers and their perspective on the affective and instructional factors that affect second language learning and teaching. The diarist keeps an account of his or her personal language learning or teaching history, systematically recording events, details, and feelings about the current language learning or teaching experience in the diary. At some point, either on an ongoing basis or when the last diary entry has been made, the diarist revises the journal entries for the public version of the diary, clarifying meanings of the entries in the process. The researcher, who may be the diarist, studies the journal entries, looking for patterns and significant events. Also, other researchers may analyze the diary entries. The factors identified as being important to the language learning or teaching experience are interpreted and discussed in the final report. Ideas from the literature may be added at this stage. We often collect a large amount of data in our diaries, and most of the times we don't know what to do with this information and we summarize the stories. However, in order to undertake a comprehensive interpretation of the data, it's important to analyze the following aspects of a diary: the content, or what is said, the context, or where is said, and the form, or how it's said. According to the content or what is said mentioned before, and as Pavlenko points out, it's important in looking at narrative data to consider not only what was said or written, but also what was omitted and why. second focus of your analysis can be on the context of the diary entries, on a macro and micro level. On a macro level, you can examine the political, economic, and cultural circumstances of where the diary was written, while on a micro level, you can consider factors such as the actual location where the diary was written and the age of the narrator. Finally, you need to consider the form of the diary. Some extracts of a diary might be written in full sentences in paragraph form, while other excerpts might be written more informally. Some excerpts may use more complex and formal lexical items than others. Also, some sections might be written in the target language and other section in the first language. There are only a few examples of published diary studies. Most of learners and teachers feel that their diary data is not appropriate for a serious study. However, those diaries can contain valuable insights into the perceptions and challenges of language learners and teachers.